Hey everyone, Sam here. I'm just hopping on quickly to let you know that part two of Amy Mihaljevich's case is going to be pushed back a little bit due to some stuff going on behind the scenes. So we'll be jumping into a new case today and we'll come back to finish Amy's case in a future episode. But the case today that we'll be sharing is an unsolved case, and we would greatly appreciate it if you can share this case because I do believe it has the ability to be solved. And the more ears, the better. Thanks. Hi, anyone and everyone. Welcome to Have You Heard About This Case? My name is Sam.
And my name is Kelly.
Today we're going to be talking about a case that has gotten a fair decent amount of coverage. Not as much as I personally would like to see, because it is an unsolved case, but I really do think it is solvable. But before we get into it, what is our question for today?
Okay, so my question for today is a little bit lighter than a true crime question. As we have recently joined YouTube, as we mentioned. And Sam, I might already know this, or this might be a very difficult question for you to answer.
Oh, no.
What is your favorite YouTube channel to watch?
Oh, God. I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch more YouTube than any other network or anything.
That's why I asked, because I want to hear what the best ones are.
Well, I'll just say what I've been watching recently. Because
Okay.
I cycle through stuff. I'll watch stuff where it's like I'll watch it a ton for like a couple weeks, and then I won't watch their content for like 6 months, and then I'll go back and like catch up. So I have a lot of that sort of stuff. But
Yeah,
right
the
now,
backlog.
I've been watching a lot of Project Fear.
Okay.
Which is,
I think
if
you
you've heard
mentioned
of,
that to me.
I know I've definitely mentioned it to you. If you know the show Destination Fear that was on Travel Channel, it's the same people. It's paranormal investigation stuff.
Is this
but
Tech
they,
Bagans or
It's no.
People who
So
don't.
the guy who started Destination Fear was a cameraman for Zach Baggins. So that's kind of how he
Poor
started
man.
getting into the field and everything. And then he created
Yeah.
this show, which is really cool. It's not. It is like your paranormal investigation, but one thing that they kind of talk about more and kind of experiment with more is the fear that you get in these locations and if that potentially amplifies what's there. And so like they do a lot of like solo stuff where it's like it's a
So,
group
like,
of 4 people.
So,
And-
like, if you're more scared, does it increase the activity? Like, is that what
Exactly.
they're looking for? They would
Yep.
have a gold mine with me.
It's fun. The group of people just they're childhood best friends, like from like toddlers, childhood best friends. One,
Oh
so
my
2 of them
God.
are brother sister, and it's fun. Like I love
That sounds
paranormal
fun.
shows. Even as a skeptic,
Yes.
I find them fascinating. So I really enjoy it because it's a group of people that you just enjoy watching because they're funny people. They're right around our age. So it's like a lot of the jokes that they say, it's like, I
Right.
get it. I grew up in the
Right.
same time period. But
Right.
then it's
You're
the
like,
paranormal
same.
stuff on top of it, which is fun.
Yeah.
What about you? What are you watching on YouTube?
So, okay, I'm, like, looking at my YouTube right now for what my big ones are. And I need to get, true crime YouTube, I definitely have been given the task by Sam of becoming a True Crime Weekly devotee, which I do not regret in the slightest.
I love
They're
them.
fantastic. They're fantastic. I love their coverage. But also, on a lighter note, I love the channel Yoga with Adrian.
Oh, I actually
She
love that
does.
channel too. I used
Yes!
to do her yoga
I
every
love
night.
it. I love it. I do her. It is just a stretch, slow yin yoga, and she does a lot of different modifications for people who may, need them. And lately I have. And so it's been great watching her content. And then I always love Elise Myers. I don't know if you're familiar.
I know a little bit. I've never been a huge fan, but I've seen her stuff, like clips of it before. And she is funny. I've just never watched a full video of hers or anything.
I really like her. I've watched a lot of videos of hers, and she also has a podcast that I've listened to. And recently, I just like how real she is, because recently she had a baby, and they're going through some struggles with his health. And
I heard that there was some unfortunate comments and things on some of her socials. Yeah. And it's just, it's sad to hear some of that stuff. That's unfair. Especially when you're being vulnerable and kind of telling your story.
Yes, and that's the correct word. The vulnerability I see in her videos is something that I really respond to. And I think that her just talking to the camera, sharing this story about the experience of having a child who's struggling with health issues is going to resonate with a lot of people.
Oh, so many people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to talk about that publicly.
Yeah, and I feel like she vibes with a lot of people because she's a parent, but also I'm on the same wavelength with her because she's a lot open. She's very open about her struggles with mental illness. Mm-hmm. And so it's like everyone always says, you want to see yourself reflected in the content that you watch,
Yeah. Or even just in those you admire, having somebody who you can look up to who's going through some difficult times as you may have is important.
And then you're like, okay, maybe I can handle this stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I think that can be something so positive about social media, but I think a lot of you have probably heard at this point, I don't like social media. I don't personally use it. I use it for the show, and that's it.
And you personally respond to the comments on your cases.
I think it's very important with the show to be present, because that is our line of communication. But for me personally, like, if something's happening in my life, I'm just gonna call a friend. Like, that's who I am.
Right.
But to have strangers kind of tell you that some personal things that you're going through, that you're being vulnerable about, is wrong, or whatever they're saying, it just makes me sad, and makes me have no desire to have a social media presence as an individual person.
Right. The online community can be so ugly. And it's funny because we were talking before we hit record just about how some of these streamers, podcasters, anyone who has a sphere of influence can create these sort of subsets of very terrible people.
Yeah, you can create a very toxic community fairly easily.
Yeah. Who all swarm on people like this who are trying to be genuine,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and dive into today's case.
Okay, yes, I've not heard it.
There's going to be a lot of questions. There's a lot that we don't know.
Okay.
And it's not, I think that it's not that it's a lot that is just unknown. I think the police know a whole lot more than what's being put out there. But I think this case is solvable, and I would really, really love to see a conclusion come. Because I will say, we'll get to it at the very end here, but just a couple months ago, it was back in the news. So I'm hoping this is a very, very good thing, and that's a big reason I wanted to cover it. So today
Okay.
we're going to be talking about the murder of Blake Chappell. He was born on February 7th, 1994 in Clayton County, Georgia. And his father wasn't really in the picture too much. I don't know a whole lot about him, but it was very much Blake and his mom, Melissa, who he was very close with. And
Okay.
according to the website seasonsofjustice.org, Blake was friends with everybody and was the type of person who lights up a room when he would walk in. And I know that's a kind of common and cliche saying that's kind of lost meaning over time, but based on everything that I read, it does very much fit Blake. That's just the type of person he was.
This makes me so sad because 94 is the same year my brother was born.
Yeah,
And
just a few
I
years
just
younger
know,
than us.
I just know how, like, oh, this is going to be bad.
So
Like,
he very much
I
a
believe it's
typical-
true. I believe it's true.
Right. And we have some examples
You
of
know.
stuff that you'll see where it's just like he cared about people, and that made him
Yeah.
somebody that people cared about. Like
Yeah.
it's a two-way street.
Oh my gosh.
But he was very much a typical teenager. He loved Guitar Hero. Like that was his favorite game. And he would do this trick where he'd, like put the guitar behind your head and still play it perfectly. And like he'd be playing and he'd just like turn and like have a conversation with somebody and still get a perfect score on the song. Like he loved it.
That's awesome. I remember Guitar Hero. In it.
Right?
It's just, oh God, it just reminds me more and more of my brother because my brother kicked ass at Guitar Hero. And then he made the transition onto playing the actual guitar.
Blake
but I
would
was
play the
terrible
guitar
at Guitar
as
Hero.
well. That
Oh,
was
yeah?
also he really loved playing the guitar. He just loved music.
Oh,
And his friends would say that like he didn't just play Guitar Hero, he owned it. like
yeah.
there's no one that
This-
compared to Blake.
Don't play Blake at Guitar Hero. You're gonna lose.
And his favorite song was Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas.
Good choice. Good
Classic.
choice. Okay. I approve. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he always liked being the center of attention. Like, it's just, as I said, like, just walk into the room and everyone notices him.
Yeah.
And he loved
Gravitates.
that. Yeah.
Gravitates towards him, when
and
you
he
have
would,
that
like,
positive energy.
Exactly,
people-
yeah. And he would rap for his friends. And his friends would say that, like, he wasn't that good. But we just let him believe that he was good because it was fun. Like,
He doesn't
we all
need to be.
enjoyed
Yeah,
when
he's
he
like,
did it.
this is fun.
And he also really loved to ride his dirt bike. That was like
Scary.
a prized possession of his because he worked really, really hard to get that dirt bike. He essentially created his own business in high school by buying energy drinks and then reselling them at school for a slight markup. And
I love him.
right. And that's
That is-
essentially how
that-
he got his dirt bike. Because do you remember back in the day for like monsters and things, if you kept those like colored tabs, you can like mail them
Hell
in for
yeah.
prizes?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what he would do. So he would sell these energy drinks, then he'd ask the people, be like, hey, would you mind keeping the tab for me and giving it back
Yeah.
at the end of the day
Yeah.
or whatever? And so a lot of people
Yeah.
were just like, yeah, whatever. It's just going to go in the recycling anyway. So they'd give him these tabs. And he actually collected enough tabs to get the dirt bike from Monster.
Oh my God.
Right?
That is.
Do you know how many tabs that
Brill-
is?
That is brilliant. I know exactly how many tabs that is. I was there for that.
It's like
I was there
gallons
for
and
Monster.
gallons of tabs.
That is gallons and gallons. That is like totes, plastic totes of Monster tabs.
Yeah,
But
like incredible work to get that done. Like, I wonder how many people
Again.
actually, like, cashed that in to actually get the dirt bike.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure Monster was like, crap, now we got to find a dirt bike.
Right?
This young man is brilliant.
So
He said they're not going to sell the energy drinks at school. Yeah, they're not going to sell them at school because they're trying to take everything fun from us, but don't worry, come check out my backpack.
Right?
Give me the tab. I love him.
And he also, his career goal was he wanted to be a TV anchor, which just sounds like it's perfect for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
magnetic personality, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, his mom would also say that his other career goal would become a lawyer, which I think also fits.
Another good idea.
Yeah. I think that because you're still in front of people, you're still presenting and like.
Well, and you want to be personable and articulate and you know, a good presence in the courtroom. As we've read in some of our historical cases, there's not always that much decorum in the courtroom.
Right. But yeah, his immediate goal that he wanted was to be on TV. And I think that's what he was planning on with going to college. Like, that would have been his immediate goal.
Okay. Okay.
And when Blake was 17, he was dating a girl named Rion. And I'm not entirely sure how long they were dating. I think it was probably a few months at this point. But it sounds like their relationship was going really well. They really cared for each other. And on October 15th, 2011, Blake and Rion went to their high school homecoming together. And
oh my God, I'm so old.
that afternoon,
Homecoming.
Melissa took Blake out to pick out his tie for the dance because he wanted to have it match Ryan's dress. And so you had to get like the right color, and I guess it took them forever to pick out the right tie.
Oh my gosh.
And they ended up being late.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I remember that.
Right? And like you have to like get the right like boutonnieres and corsages and everything.
The exact same thing happened with my homecoming date. He was late because he was trying to find the right colored blue.
Right. I remember running into a good friend of mine at Kohl's, and he was trying to pick out his tie one day, so I ended up like stopping, like helping him pick it out. But it was like such a stressful moment for him.
You took mercy on him. You were like,
right. He's like one of my best friends, and I just happened to run into him at the store. And he's like, okay, I have time. Like, we can do this.
Yeah, you're like, I have time, and you're in desperate need of help.
Right. So the day of the dance, he's picking out his tie, and then Ryan's mom, Shannon, dropped them off for a sushi restaurant for sushi before the dance because Rion loved that Blake liked sushi. She was like looking for people in her life that would eat sushi with her, and Blake loved it as much as she did.
Okay.
So that was like their special dinner before homecoming.
Good.
And then they went to the dance. They had a fantastic time. And around 10:30, Ryan's mom came to pick up the couple and took them back to Ryan's house. They curled up. They began watching a movie. But then around 11:30, Rion actually drove Blake to his friend Austin's house because he wasn't allowed to spend the night.
Right. Oh, yeah. They're 17 and it's homecoming. You're not allowed to spend the night.
Yeah, so they were able to hang out for about an hour after the dance, but she drives him over to Austin's house.
And then we go to Austin's house.
And so Blake was planning on sleeping at Austin's, but he hadn't fully told his mom this whole plan yet, so he calls his mom, fills her in on everything. She's okay with it, and so they just go on with their night.
Okay.
And
it sounds like everything's going so well, and I'm going to get really upset soon.
Yeah. He even said on the phone with his mom that, like, this was one of the best nights of his life. Like, he just had so much fun at the dance.
Oh, my God. And he's only 17.
17, yeah. So Blake and Austin, they're hanging out. They decide they want to go walk to a nearby gas station because they apparently wanted to attempt to buy some cigarettes. But the gas station was closed, so they couldn't.
Wait.
They walked back home.
Do you know what year this is?
2011.
17. He was born in 94. So 2011. Yeah. So, I mean, he maybe could have gotten those. Maybe.
It's possible they could have
not.
gotten some, but it was closed, so they couldn't
but it was
even
closed. Yeah.
attempt.
So it's irrelevant. I was just trying to place how old he would have been trying to do that.
Yeah, 17 years old.
Yeah,
So they just
passable.
walk back to Austin's house. Kind of no big deal. And then at some point, around 2 or 3 a.m., they're not entirely sure the time, but within that hour, Blake actually decides to leave Austin's house and go back to Ryan's and sneak in her bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate it because I'm scared about what's about to happen.
But
I don't know
they're
this case at all.
17-year-olds. Like,
I hate it because I'm scared. But this is exactly what I would expect if I had a 17-year-old child. I'd be like, there's no way he's not sneaking out. There's no way.
right. Yeah. So Austin is just kind of like, yeah, whatever, man. And he gave him his jacket because it was pretty chilly out. It's October. And
Ryan's house was walkable from Austin's house?
it's about 3 miles. So it's about an hour walk.
That's a long walk.
And we'll get into that.
Okay.
We're gonna get into some of this because that's important.
Okay.
So Austin
but he gave him a jacket.
his jacket because at this point, Blake is wearing his black pants from the dance and a white t-shirt because he had actually taken off like his button down that he was wearing at the dance at Ryan's and accidentally left it there. So he didn't really have anything extra. So Austin's like, oh, go ahead, take my coat. It's chilly out. You're fine. He also gave him a house key so that Blake could come back in the house easily when he's back from Ryan's.
Right. So he doesn't get caught in the morning. No, I know.
Yeah. And then Austin's like, I'm going to go back to bed. Like,
okay,
see ya.
fair. Because it's 2 or 3 in the morning at this point.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
So he goes back to bed. Makes sense.
So Blake leaves on foot, 3-mile walk. He gets to Ryan's around 4:30 a.m. and snuck in her bedroom window.
Ooh. Oh, Lord.
And Ryan kind of remembers that he tried to startle her, but she actually woke up before he could. Because I guess he texted her and was just like, hey, I'm on my way over. And she was sleeping. And she just happened to wake up and see the text before he actually arrived. So luckily she didn't like scream.
Right. It would have ruined it.
But she said when he got there that he was noticeably very cold. And that he was wearing his black pants, t-shirt, and a hoodie. And this raises a couple questions. Austin was adamant that he gave him a coat. And so he arrives at Ryan's wearing a hoodie, which is a white hoodie. I think the coat was black. I don't have that confirmed. I saw it some places report it and some places not mention it.
But either way, we have a consistent report from Blake that it was a coat. And
Austin.
the hoodie
And that it was
different.
a coat. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Austin. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and it sounds like the
that's
hoodie that he was wearing when he arrived at Ryan's was one that he wore a lot. I think it was a Aeropostale hoodie, white with like the red, like patch kind of lettering. Very common, like very typical Apostle.
Yeah. No, I know exactly the sweater that you're talking about.
Right. It's like if you know Apostle, you know exactly what I'm saying.
You know, yeah, it was that sweater.
But like that's no one quite has an answer to that. I also would like to point out they say Austin says that he left but sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. But he doesn't arrive to Ryan's until 4:30. That's
yes.
too much time. Two and a half or 1.5 hours.
I was wondering about that. I was like, 4:30 in the morning. That is quite a time period, a long time period that it took him to arrive. Because we said 3 miles, and I mean, that's not nothing. It will take you some time, but
I have further down in my script, you're going to see a map where I did like the walk route on Google to tell me it's an hour and 4 minutes estimated.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's like, okay, I can understand it. Like, if he left at 3, maybe it took him a little extra time. Maybe he was walking a little slower. Like, an hour and a half, I can potentially understand that. If he left closer to 3 o'clock, I can understand where that happened. But if he left closer to 2, I don't understand 2.5 hours.
Yes. Yeah, then it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Yeah, the travel, I just, as soon as you said that in the paragraph, it pinged for me. I was like, that's a little odd.
It's a lot of time. Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of time. Yeah.
And authorities have questioned both Austin and Rion, and they both seem like they're being incredibly truthful with exactly what he was wearing. Like, it seems odd that they're both right, but the dots don't fully connect yet. And we're going to have a lot of these sorts of questions throughout this episode. There's a handful of things here that just, the dots don't connect. And that's a huge reason I want to cover it, because it's confusing.
Okay, I will hold my questions.
Yeah, we might not get answers for a lot of it, because as I said earlier, the police haven't discussed too much publicly. So there's a lot we just truly don't know. But the young couple curled up in bed, and they were just kind of talking about their plans for the day. They had plans around 11 a.m., which was at that point just a handful of hours away.
Right.
I was just kind of talking about, my Lord. Right. They're just talking about like what they're gonna do.
They have so much energy.
Right.
They're like, it's 4:30 in the morning. We'll be there at 11, and like.
See, I was awake at 4:30 this morning, but it's because I woke up for my day at 4:30 this morning.
It's youth. It's not the energy drinks he's selling.
Right.
They'll just be up all night, and I gotta go to bed.
And so they're discussing what they want to do, and Rion recalls that Blake told her that, quote, he said he loved me, and that no matter whatever happened to him, he will always love me. Which, as teenagers, that has to be a sweet sentiment, but it's also kind of odd. Of no matter whatever happens.
That's that
I don't have more information on it. It's just weird.
Yeah, that qualifying statement is a little odd.
Yeah. So around 5 a.m., Ryan's grandma heard them talking and came into Ryan's room and saw that Blake had snuck in.
Oh, no, it's even worse. He didn't get caught by mom. He got caught by grandma.
He got caught by grandma. And Blake, he made an attempt to, like, hide under the covers, but, like, this didn't fool grandma.
No. She's like, excuse me, young man. Oh, no.
So the grandma goes in to go tell Shannon, Ryan's mom, like,
no.
Your daughter has a boy in her bed. And,
oh, no.
And Blake, like, as she leaves, Blake asks Rion, like, should I try to sneak out or should I just stay here and deal with it? And Ryan's basically like, you might as well try. Like,
right.
Probably not going to be in any more trouble. Yeah, try to get out of here.
Right.
So as he's actually, like, going out the window, Shannon was walking in and saw. So it's like, obviously, she knows. But he's able to get out. And he runs off.
Right.
And he immediately starts texting Rion, apologizing. And asking Rion to also apologize to her mom for him.
Yeah.
And
that's nice.
It's very clear that Blake felt really bad for sneaking in. Because also, they weren't doing anything inappropriate. They were literally like cuddling and talking, just chatting.
It doesn't sound. Yeah, I mean, he got there at 4:30 in the morning,
and this is half an hour later.
Inappropriate, like they're
yeah.
They just went to homecoming. They're probably exhausted. They're just talking about what they were going to do for the next day. But grandma ain't deaf.
Right. So it's very clear he felt really bad about sneaking in and getting caught. And eventually, Shannon herself texted Blake to tell him, like, it's going to be okay. Like, he was that worried that she felt like she needed to reach out to him, being like, we'll talk about this, but, like, it's going to be okay.
Okay, so he was very worried.
Yes. Blake, you can tell he's just a truly caring person, and he wanted to be with Ryan because he cared about her, but he's really upset that he got her in trouble. And
right. Well, that goes to show like how truly upset he was and how much he wanted to reach out, that her mom would text him and say like, it's going to be okay.
Exactly.
Like, don't worry.
Yeah.
You're in trouble, but it's okay.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, especially because they weren't doing anything inappropriate, I think her as a mom can understand that's like, you weren't harming anything, but like, this is not something you should be doing.
Yeah, like you're in trouble, but it's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
You can't sneak into my 17-year-old daughter's bedroom because we all know what typically happens. So you gotta stop doing
like
that.
The next few steps of that could be bad.
Yeah, but everything's okay, ultimately. That's very nice of her.
So about a half an hour later, around 5:30 a.m., Ryan gets a text from Blake saying... right around 5:30. Okay. Ryan gets a text from Blake saying that he was pulled over by a cop while he was walking near a bridge. And just a couple minutes after that, he again texted Ryan saying the police just looked at his ID and let him go. My personal assumption is maybe this could be curfew related. I know where I grew up, we had a curfew.
Yeah.
So
did we. So
it's homecoming night. There's probably teenagers out drinking. Cops stop them just to kind of check. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
But the issue is they didn't record this stop.
Okay, I was going to ask you if there was any imaging captured of him.
There's nothing.
On these walks.
There's these text messages to Ryan, and that is it. And it's like, it's standard procedure to report any stop, even if there was no sort of violation or anything. But I think many of us know that that's really not always the case. I think a lot of us know that, like, they just don't want to file the paperwork because it really is something so innocent.
On homecoming night, they're probably stopping every teenager that walks by, you know?
Exactly.
Not to minimize this at all or to say that standards and practices shouldn't be followed, but on homecoming night, if you were to record every teenager that you stopped to check if they were drunk, you would be working on that for the next 8 months.
Right. Like, I don't like it, but I understand it.
Yeah, I do. Yes. That's a good way to put it.
But unfortunately, the officers didn't even really remember this stop. So there was no additional information that they could provide about Blake that morning because a few minutes after Blake told Ryan the police had stopped him, and he also said that he was really cold, and it's like, it's 5 a.m. It's October in Georgia. It's chilly.
It's cold. Cold, yeah.
But that were the last messages he would ever send.
Oh my God.
So I really wish there was this police report because it was minutes from the last contact he had over text.
Yeah. So okay. The officers stopped him and he texted her to let them know that they did. And he texted her again saying they looked at his ID and let him go.
Yeah, just a couple minutes later he said that.
after the cop stopped him, did he text her and say that he was cold, or was that included? Do you know?
That was kind of
in
like,
one
I
of the
think
other
within the
messages?
couple of minutes. So it was like, cop stopped me. A couple minutes later, they let me go. They just glanced at my ID. I'm good. And I'm really cold. Like, kind of all at the same
Okay.
general time, whether it's in the same text or not, within the same
Okay.
few minutes.
Okay. Okay. I was just trying to see if like there were records of messages from him after he spoke to the police officer, or if it just went cold there.
Within minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan and Shannon kept texting Blake, and he's not responding. So Shannon's just like, he probably just made it back to Austin's and is climbing into bed. So she's like, okay, we're gonna go back to
Right.
bed and we're gonna check in a couple hours. Like,
Right.
it's
He
still
probably fell asleep
5:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So Shannon goes back to her bedroom. She tells her husband kind of what happens, and he really didn't seem concerned. Shannon said that
Wow.
he kind of sleepily rolled over and said, "Damn teenagers," and rolled back into bed.
Yep. Yep. That's yep.
So,
Yep.
um,
That totally tracks dad stuff. You know.
right. Well, it's like, okay, your wife comes in saying, "Hey, our daughter
Five-
had a teenage boy in the house, but he's gone now." He's like, "Ah, damn
Right.
teenagers." Like,
5:30 in the 5:30 in the morning. Like she's like, he's not even here, so you can't go in and like intimidate him. You know.
Right.
Like he's like, I'm going back to bed. We'll deal with this when it's not 5:30 in the morning.
exactly. So about 2 hours later, Shannon checked in on Ryan and asked if she had heard from Blake, but Ryan hadn't gotten anything. So then they kept trying again for a couple more hours. Around 9:30 a.m., Ryan called Austin to see if Blake made it back because she still hadn't heard anything. And Austin goes and checks the house and couldn't find him. So Shannon and Ryan get in the car. They drive between their house and Austin's house and pick Austin up so they just can drive around the area and just kind of see if they can find him. And as I said, this is only about 3 mile distance between their two houses. And there are, for the most part, two main routes that he would have walked on. And I have a map for you later in our script here, so you can kind of see what I'm referring to.
Cool.
But they spent
And
45 minutes
social
driving around
it for
this
you guys.
small. Yeah, it'll definitely be put on our socials. But they drove around for 45 minutes in this small area, and they couldn't find anything.
Oh.
So
God.
while Shannon, Ryan, and Austin are driving around, Shannon's husband, he was actually out at his hunting property outside of town with a friend, just preparing for the upcoming hunting season, putting up their tree stand.
Right.
And so
Right. Because it's
Shannon
October.
yeah. Shannon calls him, like, worried, saying they still haven't found Blake. And so he comes back into town and he picks up Austin so that the two of them can start to walk through the woods. So Shannon and Ryan are driving and they're trying to go on foot. And
Okay. Okay, so they're doing both at the same time. Like they're driving around but they're also on foot. Oh gosh, they care so much about him.
so
This is so sad.
while Austin and Matt are on foot searching, they actually see a police car drive by. So Austin flags it down to let him know that his friend was missing. And at this point, the police follow up with Melissa to inform her that Blake was missing around 11:30 that morning. So this is all happening fairly quickly. Like, it's been a handful of hours, but the police are being contacted early. I'm kind of surprised Melissa wasn't contacted earlier, but I wonder if they just didn't have her contact information or something.
Yeah.
Because I feel like based on what we've learned with Shannon and Ryan, they're the type of people who would contact her if they had the way.
Right. So perhaps, they just didn't have the way of contacting her.
So throughout the day,
Because
many friends...
11:30 is quite late. After they
especially when they
searching.
knew,
And,
like, at 9:30 that he didn't arrive at Austin's.
and they started searching, you know. You would think
So
right then, if they had it available to them, they'd pick up the phone and be like, something's not right.
that's my assumption. But again, that's just speculation. We don't actually know.
Right.
But throughout the day,
We have no
many
idea.
friends joined the search for Blake and Melissa, or for Blake. And Melissa stayed home because she wanted to be near her phone. While everyone else is searching, she's literally like sitting next to her phone, which I can only imagine has to be a terrible feeling.
That has to be the worst feeling in the world. And you need to sit by the phone. And
this
that's
is
awful.
2011. Like, house phones were still a thing. Like, a landline was still commonplace at that point. I don't know if she didn't have a cell phone. I know Blake had very recently gotten his cell phone, and he only had a texting plan. He didn't have a calling plan.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So, yeah, so basically he could only text and he could only call 911.
Landlines were just common, and I just remember I got a cell phone first, too, before my mom. So, yeah, maybe just Melissa just didn't have a cell phone, and she was just waiting by the landline, and maybe these folks who are searching didn't have the landline number.
That's my assumption. As I said, we don't really know, but just based on everything I've read about Shannon and Rion, I feel like if they had that opportunity, they would have called her. But unfortunately, with all these searches and all the friends joining, there was no sign of Blake anywhere, and Melissa did not receive a call from him.
Oh, God.
So some time has passed at this point. Now it's getting to later October, and there's still no signs of Blake. There's no leads, and the police start to believe he potentially ran away. And I think since we cover cases like this, he didn't run away. Like, if we're covering it, that's not what happened. But I can understand why the police thought this.
I do too.
Well, we have some more information coming up here. So, in addition to no signs of him, Blake also had an upcoming court date that was scheduled to be shortly after he disappeared. And this court date is in relation to something that happened the previous May.
Okay. So I see why they thought it too, and I hate it.
Well, there's even more to it, though. Like, the court date, there's a lot with this. So what happened?
So what's happening? Yeah.
What happened the previous May was that is that Blake was dating another girl at this point. And this girl, we're not going to name her. She's kind of come out and said she doesn't want to be named. So most articles just kind of call her the ex-girlfriend.
Fair.
So she actually ran away from home. And she went to Blake after she ran away. And he encouraged her, like, you got to figure this out. Like, this isn't the right answer. So he was encouraging her to go back home. But before he could actually convince her of that, her stepfather and stepmother were out looking for her. And the stepdad went to the trailer park where Blake lived at the time. And as he was going through the trailer park, he would, like, stop and ask people if they've seen Blake. And they would just kind of either give him, like, I think he might be over there, or, like, I have no idea where he is type of thing. Right. And he would lift his shirt to show that he was carrying a gun.
Okay. So stepdads are stepdadding.
So he made it very clear what he was there for. And
Jesus, man.
So eventually he does find Blake. And he beats the crap out of him. He gets him on the ground. He starts kicking him in the head. Really beats him up.
That's wild.
And this is in front of people. There are numerous witnesses to this. And And one witness said that once he did this, he actually grabbed the ex-girlfriend, his stepdaughter, and put her in the trunk of his car and drove off.
Oh my God.
And she spoke with the police, and she basically said, like, everything every witness is saying is true, except I was not put in the trunk. But she's just like, yes, this is exactly what happened, except for that one little piece.
Okay.
And so the issue that caused the legal issues for Blake...
Yeah.
Because, like, that wouldn't cause him legal issues. Like, it would cause issues in the legal system where he's filing charges against this guy.
He could press charges, yeah.
But the stepdad pressed charges against Blake for interfering with the custody of the stepdaughter. And I don't know exactly what was going on, but it sounded like there was some sort of custody battle going on. And with her running away and going to Blake, they viewed that as, like, he was involved in her running away and hiding, even though that's not the case. And Blake was 17 at this time. In the eyes of the law, he's considered a legal adult.
Yeah. So he's... I guess I can see how you could say he was attempting to interfere with the custody thing. I guess you could make that
case, but yeah, that's...
Yeah, I guess you could make that case, but he was encouraging her to return to you, and also that speaks to Blake that he's encouraging someone who is running away to go home.
Yeah. But because of this, Blake was arrested, and he spent, I think, like a week and a half to 2 weeks in jail. Because he had to get money for the bond.
Oh, man.
And so at the point of Blake's disappearance, he was out on bond, and his next court date was October 14th. And that's like less than 20 days after his disappearance. So that's why the authorities were kind of thinking potentially he would have run away because of this upcoming court date.
Yeah.
But, like, this scared them so much. Like, this scared Blake and Melissa so much that Melissa actually, like, picked up and moved them away from that trailer park out of fear. And she even discouraged Blake from, like, talking to his old friends because they didn't want any way of having him figure out where they went. They were so scared of this man after he beat him up.
I mean, that makes sense. He kicked him while he was on the ground. Like, what? I said so many times during the Christopher Bennett episode that we are all equal in the eyes of the law, but I believe I would have countersued for the assault on him.
Yeah. I don't know if they got to that point yet. I don't like a lot of this is up in the air because that happened only a few months previous to him disappearing. But as I was saying, like, I understand how the police came to this conclusion, but Blake's former girlfriend, she had been very vocal from the beginning that Blake didn't deserve these charges. And she told police, like, it was my choice to run away. I happened to run to him. He was trying to convince me to go home. Like, that he did everything correctly. So and that he should not be in this position because he wasn't interfering with my custody. That was me.
Okay. Do you know how old... Okay, I'm sorry. Did you say how old the girlfriend was?
I think they're around the same age, so 16, 17. Around there.
So she's reasonably old enough to say, like, he's not interfering with my custody. I made my own choices. I'm either a legal adult in the eyes of the law or close to being one.
Yeah.
And at least we have somebody who is confirming that he was telling her all of these things, like, go home, resolve it.
And so... because of all of this and her coming forward and just it's not lining up that he actually interfered, the prosecutors encouraged the stepdad to drop the case. And that sounds like it was either like right at that October 24th court date after he disappeared, or like shortly before it. I think the decision was made after he disappeared, but I don't know about that, so I don't think that might not have any relevance whatsoever. But charges were dropped, and the stepdad agreed, like, that's okay. But he also made a comment saying that he'll drop the charges if he never sees Blake again.
I don't like this guy.
I don't like this guy either.
I don't like him at all.
So again, I kind of understand it, but I feel like just us sitting here talking about it, it's pretty clear that there's enough evidence that even if it did go to court, Blake probably would have won. Because he wasn't interfering.
And I've just formed a theory for our final wrap-up thoughts. We'll see.
Oh, we'll talk about it. I think I know your theory.
There could be twists and turns. There could be twists and turns there.
So nearly 2 months would pass without any signs or news of Blake. On October 19th, 64 days after 19th? On December 19th, 64 days after he disappeared, his body would be found. Some people who were passing by spotted Blake face down in a creek with nothing but a t-shirt and boxers on.
Oh, God.
Authorities, they didn't immediately know that this was Blake because there was nothing else found on him, no wallet or anything. So they started just to review missing persons reports. And when the detective saw Blake's file, he called both Melissa and Shannon, since Shannon was one of the last people to see him, to get information of like what he was wearing, like what happened that day, like to just get as much as they could in any way to help identify him. And Blake did have snakebite lip piercings and a small Playboy bunny tattoo on his chest. So that's what was used to identify him.
Oh my God, that's heartbreaking, and he sounds so cool.
Right.
And
like, I feel like we would have been friends back in the day.
I do too, because if you have snakebite lip piercings, like, I want to talk. Let's talk about some stuff. And it is so sad that they had to use those to identify him.
And that's we don't know a ton about his autopsy other than the decomposition process had begun and that Blake had died from a gunshot wound.
Oh, okay.
We don't know where he was shot.
Where?
We don't know the caliber. We don't know if he was shot multiple times. That's all we know. But
all they released was gunshot wound.
Yeah. I've seen reports that say it was a head wound, but it's only a couple reports here and there, and every other article says it's not specified. So I don't know if I trust that. But nearly immediately, the Noonan County Sheriff's Office offered a $20,000 reward for information that would lead to the arrest of Blake's murderer, which at the time was the highest amount offered by law enforcement in the county's history. Wow. And
that's, nearly immediately. That's
like within a day, I think they came out with this.
Yeah, it just seems like everybody cared so much about this.
There hadn't been a murder in this town in many years. So this is such a rare occurrence. And everyone loved Blake, except for the stepfather. Everyone loved Blake. So they really wanted to solve this as quickly as they could. And they got to searching very quickly. They searched the area where his body was found, which seemed... I don't have specific addresses, but based on all the descriptions I've read, it seems like it was fairly close to Austin's house where his body was found.
Okay.
And we'll get into a little bit of that because I actually had to call my coroner friend to kind of clarify a couple things, and she has a good theory on why he might not have been found previously. But before we get there, they couldn't find any of the clothes he was wearing when he left Ryan's house. They couldn't find his backpack, this is a little odd because supposedly he left his backpack at Austin's house and they couldn't find it. But when this was all happening, Austin and his family were in the process of moving and they thought that it maybe got packed up in boxes and it's like they just can't find it right now. As far as I'm aware, they've never found it. But it's something that's very weird because it's been called out that it was left at Austin's house, which kind of will come back to a theory I have later.
It's very weird they didn't find any clothes or anything like that, too.
Mm-hmm. So on December 29th, 2011 was Blake's funeral. And it was very well attended by Blake's friends and family. And a lot of his friends have put together video and photo montages of some of their favorite memories of him. And then at the end of the funeral, they played Kansas, Carry On, My Wayward Son, which, as we mentioned, was his favorite song on Guitar Hero. So this is very fitting to be the end of his funeral, which is just so sad.
Yeah. That's so sad. 2011, oh my God.
Right?
17-year-old boy.
Let's get into the investigation because there's a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions. So as I mentioned, he was face down in the creek. And the t-shirt he was wearing was described as an undershirt. And he was wearing boxers. So I personally assume that this is like a white or a solid color shirt, probably worn under the dress shirt he wore to homecoming. Which also matches the description of what Austin said, saying he just had his black pants and a white shirt on.
Right. He left the house in a t-shirt, a white t-shirt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the timeline here is a little difficult to determine, at least with the information that we know publicly. Some articles I read said that his body was not very decomposed, as you would expect it to be for someone who had been missing and killed 2 months previously, because the police did come out and say that they believed that Blake was killed basically at the time of his disappearance.
Wow.
And so that's weird that like there might not be as much decomposition showing with being dead for 2 months. So I called my coroner friend. And I'm just like, can you help me just understand this? Like, is there a logical explanation? And almost immediately she said, like, I think that there could be, like, this would make sense. And obviously this is speculation. This is just based on the information I found in the articles and told her. But she basically noted immediately that one of the biggest factors in decomposition is air. And if Blake's body was being held underwater by a branch or something, and then it surfaced near the time where he was found, that would slow the decomposition process because the oxygen isn't getting to it underneath the water. Obviously, water does have damage when it comes to the decomposition process, but this is also winter.
Yeah.
It's cold. That's also going to slow it down. And one thing that's very common is a body in water will initially sink after death. But then as that decomposition process does start, it's releasing different gases and it actually brings it back to the surface. And that potentially could be what happened, where it's like if he was caught on a branch or something and being held under, that he was jostled enough where then that process would naturally bring him to the surface. We have no confirmation of this, but that seems the most logical to answer all of the questions with that, in my opinion.
That seems, Occam's razor, that seems about right.
Yeah, and because, I tried so hard to find the depth of this creek. Because it's like a creek could be like 6 inches or it could be like 5 feet. And so I tried so hard to find the depth of this creek, and I found like government sites that would list like depth NA. It's like, Come on.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, come on, man.
you apparently didn't measure the depth
help,
of this creek, or it changes too much
help
to
me
have a
out.
consistent number. But I tried.
Yeah.
I couldn't find anything.
I did know that the body does naturally surface. Because obviously, as in the true crime sphere, all of us maybe know pretty well the Green River Killer. And I do recommend reading Green River Running Red. It's a great book. And it talks a lot about these bodies surfacing. However, it does not mention anything about what your coroner friend said about how they start to naturally sink. And it doesn't mention... Mostly in that book, it mentions how much damage was caused to the decomposition by them being in the water. So this is very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of
because
factors
the air
with that.
couldn't get to him.
Yeah, and I think when the process, and I could be wrong about this, but I think when the process of a body sinking and resurfacing, it's not over a super long period of time. Mm-hmm. Because your body does go through that decomposition process pretty quickly. It starts within hours. So that's why the belief of maybe he was caught under something, because in all likelihood, when everyone was searching that afternoon, he probably would have resurfaced at that point. Because it was very close to where they were searching is where he was found.
Yeah, this reminds me of that sad case of the young man in Tennessee, I believe. He was a college student and just fell in the river. And
just very recently, like a few months ago.
I believe his name...
Riley.
Yeah, I believe his name is Riley Strain. Right. Yeah, I was following that fairly closely because I knew that he had been caught on CCTV and had spoken to an officer in
he was like walking by them not long
but
before.
it did take like two weeks before it, so something similar like this could have happened in that scenario. Before they found him, before he surfaced and they found him.
Definitely. So as I was saying, Blake was found fairly close to Austin's house. Unfortunately, I couldn't find exact addresses. But I do know the subdivisions where both Rion and Austin lived. And so, Kelly, you can see a map right in our script here. And again, we'll post it on social media. But you can see that's not that long. What I have mapped out here, which is like the center of each subdivision, is 2.9 miles. And so, like, who knows where they exactly lived in there, but it's going to be pretty close to that.
Yeah, it'll be in there. Yeah. It's I'm just looking at the track he would have to take.
So you see the blue dotted line. That's what's believed that he would have walked. Now I have that yellow line in there, and again, I encourage you all to go check out our Instagram for this because I had to color code it to make it clearer. But that yellow line is another route he could have taken. But from what his friends and family say is he just was more familiar with that blue dotted route, so he just probably would have taken that one instead.
Can you tell, Sam, so the path, the blue dotted line crosses through this pecan park. Do you know if there is a road in there that he would have been following? What they believe is this dotted blue line, they believe that is his exact route. Like,
he would have taken that street in particular.
Some of these have streets, well-traveled. He would be walking on a road. I was just wondering... if that intersection where he would have turned to head to Austin's house was also paved through the park.
Yeah, I unfortunately have no idea. Like I said, I don't even know where Austin's house is in that neighborhood. I don't know. That's just kind of when I Google mapped that's where it took me to when I looked up the subdivision.
Well, it would make sense to me because it's a whole residential subdivision up against a park. I doubt that they put a paved path right through that because residents would probably complain.
Well, you never really know because also you'll see there's a golf course right here. There's all sorts of paths with different golf courses. And he was actually found in this White Oak Creek. And they said it was along one of the fairways on the golf course. So there's a couple options because this creek splits off into two branches. So, and one branch goes like right in between Austin and Ryan's house, while one branch goes just to the left of Austin's house on the opposite side of where Ryan's house is. So I don't know which branch he was found in. It just said that he was, it was like off of a fairway of the golf course. So no matter what, it's fairly close to Austin's house. That's what we do know.
Right. Because that White Oak Creek is not far at all from the subdivision.
Not at all. He basically, Austin's house
Both branches
borders
are not that far at all.
Yeah, Austin's house essentially borders the golf course. And this creek runs through the golf course.
Yeah.
We also don't have a ton of details about his injuries. Kind of as I was saying earlier, we know that it was a gunshot wound. But like, I wish we even knew like a caliber. We don't know any of that.
Yeah, anything like casings, anything.
Yeah. So obviously, one of the first logical suspects is the stepfather of Blake's ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
So that, understandably, number one suspect right there. And
yeah, the guy flashing the gun would be the first one I'd go talk to.
Right. So her and Blake basically broke off their relationship after this incident. And as I mentioned, out of fear, Melissa moved her family to another nearby town and like tried to get away from everything. She was so scared that the stepdad would come. As I was saying, like she wouldn't even let Blake talk to some of his old friends because she just wanted no risk of anyone finding out where they lived.
Finding them. Yeah, that's what you said, that she didn't even want anyone to know like where it was they were. So she was scared. Yeah,
she was. So once the detectives began to look into the stepdad, they were able to clear him as a suspect. I unfortunately don't have any additional details. As I said, we don't even have his name or his daughter's name. But I assume that they cleared him because he had an alibi and then people who could corroborate that alibi, and whether it's receipts or cameras or something.
I'd be interested to hear that alibi.
Yeah, I have no clue what it is.
I'd like to hear that.
You have to trust that the police.
Yeah, we do. We have to trust that. If he's cleared, I'm not a detective. I can't argue that.
Right.
But I would be interested to know what that alibi was.
Yeah, me too. And something that Melissa brought up after Blake was attacked by the stepdad was that he kind of changed. She said that there were moments where he would kind of have select mutism, which she really believed was like a fear reaction, where he just would like kind of stop responding and kind of close in on himself and wouldn't talk. I don't know how often this would happen. I don't know if this was just kind of like an immediate response to what happened after, or if this was ongoing over the few months. It was just kind of something that she mentioned during an interview. And she also believes that he may have been dabbling with drugs a little bit, most specifically ecstasy. Again, this was one article. I saw her mention this, but it wasn't brought up in other places. So I don't really know much.
So his mother believed he was specifically trying out ecstasy.
Yeah.
But we haven't been provided any details.
I didn't see any reports from
like
friends.
A search of his room.
Yeah, not that I've seen.
I wonder what makes her think like so conclusively that he was
I don't know, and
dabbing with drugs,
I tried to find out more.
specifically
It
ecstasy.
The
Yeah.
article that she was interviewed for was the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which seemed like a pretty big publication. And
Yeah,
it
I
was
mean,
like
yeah.
her being interviewed. So I don't really know.
I mean, she was
But
in the home. She knows better than me.
well, and they were close. Melissa and Blake were
Yeah.
very close.
Yeah,
Um,
she was a single mother.
Yeah, so I don't really know. Like this leads to the idea of, which I think is potentially a stretch, but could it be as simple as a drug deal gone wrong? And like my thoughts with this is maybe that makes up for the amount of time it took him to get to Ryan's house. Like did he on that walk, did he meet up with somebody and then they came back later and saw him and did something? I don't know. That could very much be a stretch. But
I mean, but could have been a plan to like come back here a little bit, and we'll have it. And,
I
and
also
we'll exchange it, and instead of bringing the drugs, murdered him.
yeah, where it's like, oh, let's just take back our drugs, get rid of this kid, and then we can resell them and make more money. I don't know. That
Right.
is very callous.
Could be.
And it's not smart if you're a drug dealer, but
No,
it's not out of the realm of possibility.
it's not. It can't be strict. It can't be stricken from the list of possibilities. But also, if I were a drug dealer, I don't know how small town this is, or how. I don't know if I were a drug dealer, if I would have wanted to draw so much attention to myself that I
Exactly.
would kill a 17-year-old boy over ecstasy.
Yeah,
Because
like
ecstasy is just not that. This kind of reveals a little bit about myself. Ecstasy is just not that expensive.
I don't buy it because
Like, I get.
like you
I
wouldn't
don't buy it
leave
either.
him in that general area with a gunshot wound. Like
Right.
you wouldn't. But one thing that kind of sparks this theory a little bit more for me is the missing backpack and the sweater. I wonder if he got part way walking and like realized he didn't have his backpack, which maybe is where his money is, and he went back with Austin's key, grabbed it, and that's why they can't find the backpack anywhere. And I don't know where the sweatshirt comes in, but like that kind of makes sense with the backpack, where he's like, oh, he walked for 20 minutes, realized he didn't have it, turned around, and that's also why his walk
Yeah.
took so long. I don't know.
Could have been. Could have been. I stand by what I said before. I don't know if I were a drug dealer, if I'd want to draw
Same.
that much attention to myself over
I
a little
personally
bit of ecstasy.
Don't think that's what it is. It's just we're
Yeah.
kind of
It
throwing
can't be
anything at the
stricken,
wall
yeah.
right now because we just don't know much.
Yeah. It can't be. It's not out of the realm of possibility, like you said.
And there's a lot of speculation as well about that stop by the police. And apparently in the text messages to Ryan, Blake, and this is just something that I'm calling out because I think it's odd, but it might be truly nothing at the same time, just kind of like everything else we're talking about. He said in the text messages to Ryan, he was pulled over.
Yeah.
If I were walking down the road and a cop stopped me, I wouldn't be saying I was pulled over.
Yes.
I would be saying
that
I was
also
stopped.
pinged for me. That also pinged for me when you said that. I was like, why would he say pulled over if he was walking?
Yeah, and I'm thinking like maybe he got his hands on a bike or something. Like I could make sense of saying you being pulled over even on a bike, but if you're walking, it's just odd. But at the same time,
Yeah.
that just could be a difference in our vocabulary and how we say things.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
And it's weird to me that none of the local officers remember it. So there's a lot of people saying that, like, is this some sort of police cover up? Like, what's going on? there's no evidence of this. Nothing seems to be leading in that direction. Because, like, what's the motive? What would be the reason?
Yeah, that is a huge reach for me that it would be a police cover up. I do find it odd that none of the local officers remember it, just given how early in the morning it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
exactly.
I think you would be like, I would think you would be like, damn, it's like 5 a.m. and I'm seeing this kid. Like, I would think you might remember that, but I don't know. Like we talked about earlier, it depends on how many kids you've stopped that night.
Yeah.
And how long your shift was. Excuse me. But it is odd that just everybody's coming up with nothing. But I do not, I don't really buy the idea that the cops are covering.
I don't either. I think,
like you said,
there would be more
no
speculation than just this bizarre traffic stop.
Yeah, there's no, and just like you said, there is no motive.
Yeah, it's like, because
no
I've heard some people talk about, like, oh, maybe the cop accidentally hit him with the car, but it's like, okay, if he hit him, did he then, like, shoot him to end suffering so you didn't get caught hitting a pedestrian? But, like, we also don't have the full autopsy report, so we don't know if there are other wounds. But you feel like if that happened, the police would say something along the lines of he was hit by a car, because that also leads a whole ton of more leads. It's like, what cars have damage? Mm-hmm. Like, that could lead you to so much more information if that was made public.
What it look like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or even like paint fragments or something. Like, when you hit something with your car, signs of your car is now on that whatever you hit. So if it's a person, if it's a tree, if it's a pole, there's evidence of that. Oftentimes,
I'm really good at hitting things with my car. I'm really good at it, and every time you do it, it does scrape the paint off, and you can tell if you go and look.
Yeah.
And one time my car got hit, and it was in a high school parking lot, and somebody had just backed into me. Like T-boned me, backed into me. And literally the way the school was, like, they just said, can you check your son's car for any green paint transfer? Because my car was green. Mm-hmm. And they found it on his back bumper. So it's that easy.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think if that were the case, like, I understand the speculation, but that's so fabricated without any even circumstantial evidence to go off of.
Yeah, it's not a theory I like. But it's a theory.
Yeah, so with all this, as we're saying, like, so much information is not public. But I think there's a lot happening behind the scenes. And it was hard to find, like, the confirmed steps of the investigation. But a couple months ago, Blake's case hit the news again. Again, it's unfortunately not a lot of information, but I find it very encouraging to see that the case is still active. And what we do know is, I think it was March, I want to say, I read these articles. So, like, literally, like, 2-3 months ago.
Okay.
That there were 3 search warrants issued for 3 different locations, and evidence was gathered. We don't know what these locations are. We don't know who owns these locations. But that's a big deal. If you're able to get a search warrant, you have some sort of probable cause that got you there.
Yes. And for 3 different locations.
Because they never found his cell phone, they never found his clothes, they never found the backpack.
Yeah.
Like, all of that is potential evidence that somebody could have.
Anything. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that there's going to be some big news in the near future. I really, really hope so.
Yeah. Because you don't just also release to the public that you executed these search warrants if you didn't find something. I hope they did.
All the articles just said 3 search warrants for 3 locations. evidence was taken in. And that's kind of
Yeah.
all the updates said. But
Yeah,
like
I've
my
hit those
biggest
too.
question, which we haven't even like talked about yet, is was this
Mm-hmm.
a random crime and a crime of opportunity, or was someone
Mm-hmm.
after Blake?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's 5:30 in the morning. Who's
Yeah.
going after him? Who knows? And I don't know if they could get cell phone records at this time. I couldn't find that
Mm-hmm.
information. I don't know if they saw who
Yeah.
he was texting or if they just had to be like verify everything through Ryan's texts and be like, "Yes, this is what our
Mm-hmm.
conversation said." And like Austin's texts and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, they
But
may not have had the ability to like ping towers yet
yeah, because he had a
or
very minimal
anything.
phone plan. Like he didn't have internet.
Yeah, he had
It
just
was
the
just
texting.
texting.
Yeah.
The only call he could have
Mm-hmm.
made was to 911, but he couldn't have made any other phone
Okay.
calls. Um,
Okay.
so it's like we just
Hmm.
really don't know. And with the lack of information, I find it really hard to even kind of come to a conclusion of like what I think happened. I
Yeah.
honestly I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, this one makes me sad a lot
Yeah.
because I mean, it it reads to me a little bit like a random crime or a crime of opportunity because Blake seems to have been such a personable guy. His girlfriend's mother had recently just texted him that everything would be fine. He clearly cared about people. I don't know who would be after him besides this stepdad who has been cleared by the
And it's
police.
weird that like his pants were removed.
Yes.
Like as
Yes.
far as I could
It's
tell, there
odd.
was no any sort of sexual assault or anything like that. I didn't see any
Mm-hmm.
discussion of that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's so odd that it's like why?
It does feel like they were trying to wipe any source of his ID so it'd be harder to get to him. I
Yeah,
don't
but you can take
know.
a
Like,
wallet out
because
of
maybe they took his
pocket.
pants because it had his wallet and the
Yeah, it's
backpack
so
because it had his
weird.
things.
Well, we don't even know if he had the backpack. I feel like since Austin can't find it, it probably somehow ended up in Blake's, or even maybe Austin's mistaking and thought he left it behind, but in reality Blake took it. That's entirely possible as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like
Yeah, it was
it
very
was 2 to
early
3
at
a.m.
the
and
morning
he's
at
like, I
that
want to go to
time. Yeah.
bed.
Yeah, it was early at that time too, and we did say almost as soon as he had left, he went to sleep because it's
Mm-hmm.
late in the night, early in the next day after you just went to homecoming.
Yeah,
Oh
I'd
gosh,
be
he said it was.
incredibly curious about that timeline. I want to know what
And
time he really left Austin's
yes,
house
I
and what he did in that time because it was a lot more than only walk to Ryan's.
yeah, yeah, I am so sad that he texted his mom that it was like the greatest night of his life. And
Mm-hmm.
then this happens. And I wonder if one of those search warrants that was executed was maybe not on his own home so they could see if he was in fact on drugs as
Well,
as his
well,
mother
okay.
thought.
I didn't put this in my script because I saw only one article, but it was quoting an officer, and I meant to put it in and I forgot. They said that the warrants and everything were not in relation to anything like drug related. So the warrants
Okay.
were in relation to Blake's murder, but not
Okay, so
drugs.
then there it is.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's why it's like
And there it
because
is.
I before I even read that, I wrote my paragraph about like what if it was a drug deal. And I was already like doubting it, but I'm like I need to bring it up because it is a semi-logical explanation when we have nothing else. But
Right.
when I read
When
that,
we
I'm
have
like, yeah, I
nothing.
didn't buy it anyway. Like I don't think that's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. I don't buy it either. I think I'm positive he and his mom were very close. And I'm positive she noticed changes in him after he
Mm-hmm.
was assaulted and brutally beaten. I
Yep.
don't know if he was on drugs. I think that may be the statement of a very concerned parent. You know,
Very
that might just
possibly.
be where the brain, that may
You're
just
trying
be
to
where the
find an
brain
explanation.
goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to grasp why your child is gone, you know, this poor woman.
Yeah, there was one
And
point, I didn't include this in my script because there's no one really knows what it was, and with the fact that the police had come out and said that they believe Blake was murdered at the time of his disappearance.
mhm.
Melissa did receive a phone call at one point that was someone not talking on the other end of the phone, but she could hear like muffled TV in the background. For like 4 to 5 minutes, she stayed on the line. And
Wow.
this was before Blake was found. So she just hoped it
Whoa.
was him.
Right.
Um,
She was sitting on the line hoping.
for minutes, just listening to this
It's
muffled TV
horrible.
in the background, hoping that he'd say something. Um,
Right.
I hate it so much, but I think that was probably a
Yeah.
prank call because the police have come out
Yeah.
saying they think that he had already been killed at that point.
Been.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's just I
Yeah.
hate that so much. We've
I
had
hate it,
cases
yeah.
that people have done that, and it's just
And
it
we
makes me
always hate
angry
it.
every time.
Yep. We always hate it. We hate that. And yeah, what interests me most is the same as you, the timeline of all this. Like, if he died the night he disappeared, when did his body go into the river? Was his body dragged into the river and like weighed down purposefully, or
Right. Because there
I
was a
don't
lot
know.
of
I don't know.
speculation because of that decomposition that
Mhm.
he was potentially held hostage and dumped later,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
just trying to like grasping at straws to like come up with anything to explain it.
Exactly.
But I think
Exactly.
like
The
once
only
I called my coroner friend and like here's the few
Yeah.
facts I know. It's very little. It was like an immediate response of
Mhm.
like this makes sense to me. And I get it.
Yeah, I totally see why you called our lovely corner friend, because this one's weird. I would have texted her too. Like, what do
Yeah.
you think here?
Yeah, like I need a professional
Yeah,
opinion
man.
cuz I have my own, but I'm
Yeah.
not educated like you are.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I have a thought, but what do you think? Man, I'm having trouble getting my arms around this one.
This is definitely one of those cases I probably heard about 4 or 5 years ago,
Mm.
and probably even longer at this point, probably like 2017 or so I probably heard about this case.
Yeah,
And I think
God.
about it a lot. Like this is a case
It's
that I
so
probably think
sad.
about like once a week. I think about this
It's
case
so
a
sad.
lot.
Yeah, he would be 30 this year.
Mhm.
He would be
I
that's
really hope that this new movement just yields some sort of results for Melissa, her
mhm.
family, for any of Blake's friends. I
Mhm.
really, really, really want to see this solved, and I think with these
Mhm.
new search warrants, there's a much higher possibility than we have thought since 2011.
Mhm.
Do you have any final thoughts?
So I am, yeah, I'm just as glad as you that these search warrants made their way into the news, showing that it is still active and people are still looking at this. And I I guess I would say that, man, it's hard. I had a thought to share, and now I'm like trailing off because there's so many unknowns. So what I really hope is that the investigators are playing this just right and have something that we don't know.
That's what I'm hoping. And I feel like that is
that
the
they're
case,
protecting.
and that's how they got a search warrant.
And all they need is a little more to use what they have. That's what I hope.
Me too.
And we've seen investigations play out like that, where there's public outcry. It takes too long, and it's, I understand that from a victim's family's point of view. But if they play their cards close to the chest like this, it's much smarter in court.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this is going to turn into like a Delphi scenario where it's like, they find someone that they feel very confident in to bring charges and bring to trial, and we knew and then nothing until that announcement was made.
Exactly. And then in court, they will lay it out like, we've had this for this long, and we tested it with this new fangled approach. And, in this case, I trust that they are holding a lot back because they know a lot. I hope they're getting closer.
I really hope so. I
too.
really, really, really want to do an update episode on this case. And I want it to have good news.
Me too. Good news, closure. It's because it's incredibly sad. And just like you said, I hope that this renewed push gets some justice or peace for Melissa and her family and all of Blake's friends who, just thought he was a magnetic personality, Tragedy.
Thank you for listening to Have You Heard About This Case? We hope you liked this episode, and please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you did. And you can also follow us on Spotify. We now have a YouTube channel, as we mentioned at the top of the episode. Have You Heard About This Case? We are also on Instagram at Have You Heard About This Case, on TikTok at HYHATC, or you can email us at haveyouheardaboutThisCase@gmail.com. Thanks, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.